Hi, my name is Andres Machin, and I'm the curator of Cheap Seats. I want to welcome you all to this moderated discussion. First, I actually want to say that our moderator, Jen DM of High Fashion, had something come up and is not going to actually be able to make it this evening, so you guys are all going to be stuck with me. But I think we're going to be all right. So Cheap Seats is a project that I started really specifically to create a platform of visibility for LGBTQ plus musicians. And I'm really hopeful actually that this is in fact the first iteration and that there will be more to come. So I really want to thank each of our participants this evening, Red's Garden, Glitter Vomit, with Brandon Strauss, Glen Parks, and Agender for their participation in this project, as well as Vital Spaces Santa Fe for helping me produce the event that we've watched last week and that we're all going to actually hear more about this evening. So for the first half of this discussion, we're actually going to be speaking with Glitter Vomit and Red's Garden. So I just want to take a moment to actually introduce the two of those groups. So Red's Garden is also known as Jen Spector. Jen is a painter, DJ, and producer, a queer Jewish trans woman that knows the power of love and body liberation on the dance floor, or as she calls it, the chill floor. She's a late convert to turntablism and plays DJ sets that weave together breaks, bass music, hip hop, and Sibian with scratching and sample drops. So if we could actually just get a quick 30-second clip from Red's Garden, that would be great. Excellent. That was a really fun set to record. And I was very happy to see it on YouTube and Facebook Live last week. I also want to introduce Glitter Vomit. Hell World is a music video collaboration with Glitter Vomit and Brandon Strauss as director and cinematographer. Brandon Strauss is an interdisciplinary queer artist based in Philadelphia. His work deals with desire, sexuality, visual phenomenon, and architectural history. Glitter Vomit is the solo project of Jasmine Crosby. Mesmerized by communication and its tools, Glitter Vomit sounds like static, like a long, slow thought, vulnerable, sparse, and layered guitar, cell phone, radio, and vocals in a labyrinth of loops, all collected audio fragments. Brandon and Jasmine met on their first day of college and have been the best of buds ever since. The visual album was written and recorded during quarantine and features Andrew Smith as performer and makeup artist, and Grace Ankrum. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So maybe we could just get a quick clip of Glitter Vomit. Excellent. So I believe we'll be joined by both Red's Garden and Glitter Vomit with Brandon Strauss now. Hi. How are you guys?
Hello, hello.
Hi, we're doing great. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Hi. I'm so happy that you guys are all here. Brandon and I have not met yet, but Jasmine and Jen and I obviously have, and I'm super excited that you guys participated in this. And it was really great to just see some new work from all of you. So one of the things that I was actually thinking about as I was thinking about the way that both of you, or all of you rather, are making your music is the idea of like process as it relates to pulling tracks and loops, and getting this external kind of input for your music making. And so I was wondering if you guys want to take a little bit of time to actually share with us what that process is about for you, and why maybe it's so significant that you have these external loops that you are bringing into it. Certainly a DJ set is really different than what you're doing, Jasmine and Brandon, but I think it's all actually really related. So I'm not sure who would like to start, but I would love to hear about that specific aspect of your process.
So I do a lot of field recording in my practice, and the Hell World album was all written during quarantine. And so like for this particular set, it felt really important to involve sounds from quarantine. So there's the sound of my neighbors having a socially distanced drink in the background. And there's the sound of fireworks and sirens during the protests in June. And there's the sound of my friend's Zoom wedding happening with like an off-key organ. And I feel like it's a really important part of Glitter Vomit, like being influenced by the outside world and kind of creating these sparse landscapes where those sounds can kind of occupy that.
Okay, and I guess as a follow-up to that, just thinking about the way that now I'm approaching this from an artist's perspective and not necessarily a musician's perspective, but thinking about the ways that the audience or the viewer relates to those sounds. Is it important to you that they have a recognizable reference, or is it something else for you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it's like pretty textured and layered in there. During the video, there's an ice cream truck like running into some blocks, which is sort of a reference to the sound of the ice cream truck going on in the background, but it's not necessarily, like it doesn't have to be so directed. It's kind of just like in there. And I feel like there are also a lot of visual loops too in the video itself, like lots of sort of repeated images, and yeah. That didn't directly answer the question. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a direct read.
Okay, and how about you, Red's Garden? What is the significance for you? Certainly, as a DJ, it's going to be really different than what it is for Glitter Vomit, but the loops and the tracks and the external influences that you're bringing into your music making and your performance, what is the significance of that for you in your process?
Yeah, I mean, I guess since DJing is collage in a way for me, I think it is kind of all that. It is all external sources, almost, unless I play a track that I made. But when I do make tracks, definitely feel all of what was said there. For example, but when I'm DJing, for example, I will sometimes play like a field recording of a river that I really like. I pulled off the BBC archive I'm probably not supposed to have. And sometimes using that kind of ambient element in between dance tracks can work if done intentionally, which I definitely try.
And I guess maybe, I mean, I know because Jen, you and I have talked about the environment as it relates to your practice. But if you all could talk a little bit about how environment informs your practice, and maybe we've already addressed it slightly because we're talking about these external influences and these loops that you're bringing in, but why is that so important in terms of like relating your either natural environment, your geographical environment, or these like sounds and the audio environment that you're living inside of? Like, what is the significance of sharing that in your music practice?
I think that for me, art is like reaching for what nature is. And I know that I'm not the first person in history who has said that either. But yeah, that's definitely how I feel about it. It's like, I couldn't do better than a sunset, but I can try, and that's my work.
Okay.
And yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
This is definitely a queer panel, I can tell.
I would love to hear the rest of your thoughts.
Okay. No, just also I come from the Chicago area, and so there's the environment as it relates to nature, but then there's also humans. We are a part of nature, and the musical environment of Chicago like definitely has informed me, and I've seen that as I've come to New Mexico and met people, and worked closely with people from other bioregions, that it feels different musically because I am from Chicago, I am from the Midwest, and raves, house, techno, big influence. So go ahead.
I really resonated with what you were saying earlier about how music is aiming to emulate the environment. I've been told that I make desert music, which is really kind of interesting, coming from New Mexico. And I've been really interested in acoustic ecology and kind of how it's like accidental. We're trying to sort of harmonize with environments. And yeah, I think the Glitter Vomit set for Hell World was very influenced by Philadelphia as well, and by plants and by the sort of greener environment. And it's interesting hearing that sound kind of organically creep in to the set in a different way. What were you going to say?
Much like you have stolen parts of sound from the BBC archival stuff, I love to mine archival things and from all sorts of places. And in the video, I took a lot of imagery of the desert from like Life magazine documentaries from the 70s, as well as like the City of Philadelphia archives for the, I guess, drone footage, but it was a helicopter, it's not a drone, the aerial footage. But that's something that I love to contextualize a place and its history, is just like mining and stealing archival stuff, because like it's fair use, like no one's gonna come for us. And it's just like a really great way to situate our visual histories. And it was so special to get to like engage in like the desert landscape with Jasmine and like reconnect with New Mexico, because it's been so long since I've been there. So to have like a project with like New Mexico folk has been really nice. I spent like half my adult life there, but I'm not from there, but it's good to reconnect. Yeah, go ahead.
I also think like we had live stream of New Mexico in the video, and it was really kind of interesting because like I think we're both a little like homesick for it, and it was like interesting to engage with it from a sort of like removed there but not quite. And yeah,
that was a little bit of actually about what I was thinking about with your video piece, is that, you know, and also just between the relationship of making and artistry that both Red's Garden and Glitter Vomit are up to, having a sense of the New Mexico landscape, regardless of whether or not you're in the sort of more metropolitan Albuquerque area or straight up in the desert, that there's a really different sense of space that is provided in New Mexico versus Chicago, for example, or Philadelphia. And so thinking about the ways in which our environment really directly relates to the thoughts we have around making, and also, I guess, and a term that you just used that I haven't heard before is the acoustic ecology, thinking about that in relationship to those landscape differences. I think it's actually just, I mean, I'll probably do more reading about it and think about it more, but I'm really curious to know, I guess, how that experience of being in two places or shooting in two places or filming or working in multiple places, a metropolitan area versus New Mexico, which is very much high desert and not exactly the same as the desert. High desert is different. So yeah, thinking about that in relation to loops and tracks that you're pulling, and this term acoustic ecology, I'm really curious about that. We don't have to spend too much more time on that, but I would love to hear your thoughts, both of you, on what that experience is like for you.
Yeah, I've got something. I mean, it occurs to me that, so when I first came to New Mexico, I had this intuition. I started DJing. I was off from DJing for like several years. I was just making my own music, just producing. And when I came here, I started back up. And one of the things I felt was that the earth here wants broken beats. I don't know why. It was just an intuition I had. And that really guided like the tracks I choose. Like my tracks are very, very, very filled with broken beats, and yeah.
Yeah, this is maybe not my music directly, but I remember a friend saying once that the noise music scene in New Mexico, which is like amazing, is not necessarily about machines in the way that it is in most places, that it's about like that vastness and that open space, and that like a lot of the music kind of has that, but like I feel like with the noise scene especially, it is like a really different sound. That's just like so special. And like for me, I feel like I'm always writing in this kind of like there's a lot of homesickness in that album, and kind of like being here, wanting to be there, kind of being in different places, being kind of communicating over distance is something that I like deal with a lot in my both art practice and music practice. And so yeah, kind of being in multiple spaces, even Zooming right now is, we're kind of in these different places sharing a screen. And
yeah, and those are all things that I tried to communicate visually. With like, I ripped the footage of traveling on train from YouTube, and like the long distance views of the mountain sunset is ripped from YouTube, and like while contrasting those from footage of Philadelphia, and then just like existing in this environment and like really Philadelphia specific places.
mm-hmm.
I think the contrast between like environments really like helped tell a story of like what you're talking about, of like missing and homesickness, and
but then also like wanting to be here
right.
too, like wanting so much to be in like several places at the same time, kind of. And yeah.
It sort of reminds me, and maybe I'm way off base, but it kind of reminds me of this idea. I remember, there's this really hard thing that happened in my life, and I kept thinking to myself, I want to get back to myself. I want to get back to that thing that's so familiar, almost forgetting the fact that regardless, there's never really a going back to. You're always growing into the next thing. You're always changing to shift to meet or adjust to that next new thing. And so even going home, for example, is something that that might not actually feel quite the same way as what you imagine or fantasize it to be. And I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm way off base, but that's kind of what this conversation is bringing up for me, and thinking about the ways in which we grow as artists or makers. And also, I mean, it's something that, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time focusing on the fact that we're in this pandemic and we're all weirdly remote and online right now. But at the same time, the event likely wouldn't exist if it weren't for this pandemic and a sense of feeling like we need to build this community up, and we need to actually remember that we're all making in these weird disparate places together and simultaneously in most cases. So I mean, I'm kind of just rambling. I'm not really sure exactly. There's not a question that's coming from that, but that is sort of what this conversation is bringing up for me. And I think as it relates to our sense of community and making in community, it's really important. So I guess my last or final question for you guys would be related to that sense of community and what it means to be making for you right now. Versus maybe another point in time when you actually had the community literally in a space you could hug if you wanted to. This is a really different situation that we're in. And so what is that experience like for you to be making in this time when, you know, historically and traditionally, I think music is performed in a live setting with other human physical bodies, not in a live setting on a screen that's related to technology and Zoom, so or StreamYard for that matter. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about that as it relates to this project.
Well, first I want to say that what you were saying in the beginning really resonated with me. That felt really poignant, and I do feel like we wouldn't have made this music video if it weren't for the kind of pressure of COVID and of being in lockdown. And like, I don't know that I would have made like a 20-minute set into a video. And so that feels kind of like a lovely opportunity. And it also was an opportunity to kind of work with what we have in our sort of pod. Like everyone in the video is someone who we're like quarantined with. And so that felt really kind of special to be making work in that way, even though, you know, like hands down, what I miss the most from the before times is going to shows and like having that kind of sense of community in person and sense of closeness and, you know, just hot bodies and loud sounds and stuff. Yeah, so it felt really special to get to make something that with everyone in the pod.
Yeah, I don't think that I would be working as much as I have been on my art practice if we were in the before times. That's what we're coining it. But yeah, I've just had ample headspace to just like edit. I could not have edited as much as I have like before, and I'm actually like, this is the only time in my life where I'll have this much time undistracted from like partying and like going to raves and hearing amazing music by Rice Garden, and going to awesome shows at Vital Spaces. No, like I love those things. But like, this is such a special time to like redefine my practice, and I think like it's I'll carry with me like what I've learned and like giving myself space to work on stuff, but. I forget what the actual question was, but that's how I'm responding to it.
Well, and like the like, there's no going back thing. Like we can imagine that, we can imagine this thing, but it's like we have this now. So like, how do we move forward with this now?
Right.
Yeah.
Phew, so much there. I think. Thank you. And thanks for the shout. Yeah, I was thinking about this today. The aspect of like, what is this for me right now? And it's grounding. Like I use music to ground. I like to be around plants and I like to DJ. You know, it's kind of as simple as that. And I like to sit at my modular synthesizer and like make tones and just kind of meditate and be in my body. And that's like just something that's really important to me. And I do it for survival, honestly. And, you know, I've had a good deal of trauma in my life. Like I'm sure probably everyone in this space has, but I definitely have. And music is a space for healing for me.
So I'm just thinking about the music as a space of healing. This event wouldn't be happening if it weren't for this pandemic lockdown virtual space. It was really an idea that sort of came at the end of feeling like, at the end of 4 or 5 months of feeling totally isolated, and a lack of community. And for me, regardless of the fact that I'm not a musician and that my primary art practice is painting and sort of more of a social practice, I guess, but I wouldn't actually have desired the community so much had I not been totally removed from it. And so in that way, I feel like all of our identities and the way that we make and the way that we think and collaborate, even on a project like this, is actually even more important now than maybe it was prior to this pandemic. And though the event isn't specifically about the pandemic, and I absolutely agree, Jasmine, that missing the bodies in the club or wherever you are, the real warm body to be around and to dance next to and to share space with, this is actually remarkably sufficient, and a very different space, but also one that I feel like is really ripe with possibility and opportunity. So yeah, I'm really happy that you all participated in this. I really can't thank you enough, and I'm so pleased to see the work existing in this very weird virtual space indefinitely. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys all so much for participating. And I guess we do have like 3 or 4 more minutes left before we transition to the next group. So if there's anything that I did not ask you that you feel like is very relevant for your music, your practice, or something that you really want to communicate, regardless of whether it's about, I guess, your specific practice or the project in general, I'd love to have you just share openly about whatever that is.
Thanks for hosting. This event gave us a goal to work towards that actually helped us stay sane. Like Jasmine said, we're gonna either produce a video or do a live thing. I said, let's produce a video. And then instantly
and here are the dates, and what totally organized it. We're gonna go big. Here are all the things.
And so now that sort of feels like, having a date to work towards collaboratively on a project is something that we plan to move forward with to survive the pandemic, and produce work while we have the opportunity to do so. So this is just the start of a new work pattern for us to mitigate depression and from isolation as well as seasonal depression.
Yeah, can I jump off of that too? I was thinking today how grateful I am for this opportunity, because it's an ecosystem, right? We're all keeping each other's practices alive by making opportunities, and I really feel grateful for you for putting this together and making that space and kind of giving us opportunities and connections. And I was just thinking about your role in kind of keeping the ecosystem of this alive.
It's a purely selfish one. I get to work with all of you guys, and I totally miss seeing you. And I would never have met Red's Garden had it not been for this project, and we're neighbors, so it's amazing.
Yeah, it's been super nice getting to know you, and thank you for putting this together. And also thanks to Glitter Vomit. It's been nice chatting, bouncing our work off of each other in this environment. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. And I really couldn't be more happy with your participation. So yeah, I think we're about to switch groups, but I hope you guys keep watching, and we'll be in touch.
Take care, y'all.
Bye. That was great. So we are actually about to move into part 2, which is there are 2 other groups bands that participated in Cheap Seats and performed last week. One of them is Glen Parks, and the other is Agender. So let me just start with Glen Parks, who is making this. The bio actually, it totally cracks me up. Schizo, synthy, paranoid, post-punk with a dash of dysmorphic desire, existential terror, hurrah, and a fetish for femininity. So if we could go ahead and play just a few moments of Glen Parks clip, that would be great.
I could help to hold you up like tears in me, even if you're compromised. No options on this door, just prize. Up and see how life for you is right. And all of you die for me, yeah, right.
All right, so that was actually Glen Parks, and I realized after I read the bio that I read the bio of Agender and not Glen Parks, so it was a totally different thing. But that bio remains the same, and right now we're going to go ahead and play a clip from Agender. My apologies. Amazing. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, Glenn. I totally messed that up. Hi, Romy.
Hi.
Thank you all for coming. I am so sorry that I mixed up your bio there.
Doesn't matter. It's an honor.
So I'm super happy that you all are here. I feel like a real kinship, I guess. Glenn, you and I know each other, so that helps me with all of the love. Romy, we have not met yet, but I think that this punk band that you have is amazingly badass, and I am very curious, I guess, about the two different ways in which all of you are performing. So, for example, one is very punk, one could be considered very pop. But I also think that, Glenn, what you're up to is also really punk, maybe in a different way. So I know that, as a LGBTQ person, I tend to really want to resist these labels. And so perhaps that's true in music as well, that you may want to resist a label or a genre. But I'm really curious to hear about how identity is playing a role in your music or art making, and what is important rather for you to represent through your music. I'm not sure who wants to go first, but I'm gonna let you guys fight it out. I think it would be great.
I'm just trying to think.
I mean, how does gender identity inform my music? I mean, I feel like my character as Glen Parks is this very outward sort of almost drag characterization of myself. So I definitely pull on a lot of queer costumey things for her.
Okay. And in terms of like your lyrics or the things that you're trying to actually communicate with your music, does that have any role in how you approach your music making? I'm approaching this from a visual artist standpoint, so I'm not a musician, which is I think a really big difference. But certainly, as I'm thinking about the projects that I'm getting up to, I'm thinking about what I want that viewer or the audience to take away. So, as a music maker, as a lyricist, what are you trying to get or communicate to your audience? What do you want their takeaway to be, and how does identity bring that back for you or influence that?
I mean, like as like, I mean, I definitely just sort of like write music like of what I'm feeling, which usually tends to be just like sad heartbreak. But I do also, I mean, I form a lot of my terminology around like I don't try to use pronouns a lot in my songwriting because like I am queer and like I want the music to be able to be perceived from lots of different perspectives, and I definitely like put that into my songwriting. That.
My turn.
It is your turn. Yeah.
I definitely describe my music. I mean, in this particular project, I have a solo thing as well, but they both definitely leak and bleed into each other. But it's definitely divine feminine music. Divine feminine to me is like a goddess, extremely strong female energy, and I also describe my music as matriarch music. But that said, I also just don't believe in, I don't know, just like my identity. It's just like a given. I feel like it's like self-explained. I don't really need to explain it. It just is what it is. For me, it's like rather than, and I know it's like my band's called Agender, but it's a wordplay thing. I think in my Australian accent, the double entendre makes sense, like an agenda. You guys say agender, and what's your agenda? And in my accent, it's like, what's your agenda? What's your agenda? So it's like, the name came out of that. It's also with, I remember making a T-shirt, the very first Agender T-shirt I made when this was such a lo-fi thing, but it was the gender symbols as like the Twin Towers with two planes flying in the gender symbols, which is kind of so wrong. So I was like, and I made they were hand drawn. I was like, if we tour America, I can never sell this thing.
That's amazing.
Like, I know, it's great. Now I think 20 years on, it might work. But yeah, that, just I don't really care. To me, my music's more about existentialism and satire and things like that rather than identity. And my talking about gender and female stuff to me comes out in my writing about desire. It's like the other. When I talk about women and my desire for women in my art, that's when gender comes out more so than about myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, first of all, I really want to see that T-shirt. For the record.
I want one of those T-shirts.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think you got to bring those back because it sounds brilliant. I guess, it's one of those questions like I feel like people ask these questions, including myself, because I just did it to you guys. But I feel like this question gets asked because, are you a queer artist or are you like a person making art that's queer art? And so all these like lines get kind of weirdly blurry, and not normally for what I would say us. It's normally the lines get blurry for other people. So the sort of heteronormative cis straight world, those are the ones that I feel like want to qualify the art as either queer art or art that's being made by a queer person. And so I think in some ways, it's pandering to that element of the audience, is like how we define and how our identities relate to the work that we're making. But But I also think, you know, one of the things you said, Romy, about working both solo and in this collaborative environment, both of you do that. So Glenn, you're also making work in this collaborative space with some other people, but you have these solo projects. And so I guess I'm wondering what that difference is for you. Like, is there a preferred mode of making? Is the collaborative preferred over the solo? What does the solo project give you that the collaborative doesn't, and vice versa? And if you value one over the other, not that it has to be necessarily one over the other, but I guess I'd like to hear from you about those two different types of approaches to your art making, your music making, and to your process and practice.
I mean, I'll go. Why not? For me, they're very distinct. My solo thing's strictly electronic music. You know, it's like industrial EBM-ish, dark electronic music, whereas my band is a post-punk band. What does one give me that the other doesn't? Agony. I think it's so much. I'm really enjoying the band process now and having other people to make decisions with. The solo thing just, it feels hard. Like, I don't know, I'm also a very indecisive Mercury and Libra kind of person. And it's just nice, like having a band to, 3 other people to work ideas with and practice with, and be a collective, and you know, hopefully when the world goes back to normal, we'll be able to tour together. But the solo thing can just feel really hard sometimes, you know, when I'm just like executive decisioning my way through everything, and like playing shows alone, and I don't know, it can feel quite lonely doing that. So the band right now feels, and that said, like I am working on solo stuff and I'll release some soon, but it just feels more enjoyable and lighthearted and easy with the unit, the band. But there's definitely crossover, but all my music is intense. It's all, you know, for some reason, like existential is the word over, like, am I a queer artist making, I don't know. Yeah, I just am. Most of the people who know me know I'm an alien. Like, I'm probably, that's how I describe myself more than, and I think I'm like I'm like an old school lesbian. Like, I grew up in the 90s. If I was going to define myself, I feel more like lesbian than I do queer. But yeah, I'm just like a thinker. I don't know. My music's hopefully philosophical and smart. And then the queerness comes through that, because queer is philosophical and smart.
Yes. How about you, Glenn? We had a brief conversation about this before, so I have some idea, or at least I have a hope that I have an idea of what you might say, but I am curious to know about this solo project. Yeah, you're on mute right now. But yeah, the solo project versus the collaborative projects that you've been working on, what the difference is for you, if there's a preferred method or not.
I mean, I like both. I think I prefer having a solo project over being in a band, but I was in a band for a really long time. And I like being able to make all my own decisions. I like having these like decision on it after having been in a band for like a very long time. But that could have also been specifically for the band that I was in.
So yeah,
Glen Parks on like lots of stuff. Yeah. Like I then get to sort of choose like different like producers or like beat makers or like other musicians that I want to add into my own project. And that's really fun because then I can do it track by track, which is cool. And I then also can just sort of like form a band that I want to play a certain show, and or be able to like play a show solos as well. Like I can choose which one I want in this sort of new form that I have as solo Glen Parks. Yeah.
I guess, I mean, that's not what I thought you were going to say, which is great. But I remember a conversation that we had about you wanting like total control over the space. So whether it was the video or the track or whatever it was, but you just wanted to be the ultimate decision maker over that, which is why I really wanted to ask you this question about the collaborative versus the solo, because I think
that was a specific conversation about the most recent music video and song that I had made, which was with a good friend and amazing video person, Sam Cahill, where we just put out this song called Reasons to Search for Night. And like our like butting heads of being like, this is my project. But he like also helped try to write the song for a movie that he was making.
okay.
So I wrote this song for a friend who was making a horror movie. And we like wrote it together, and then it like the movie never came out, and then we decided to like make this like what we thought was going to be a horror music video, but that ended up just sort of being this like very campy like Halloween music video. And after this project, I do feel like I still would like to be a solo artist.
And you're producing your work, correct? You're producing all of your stuff?
Yeah, I produce all my stuff. I bring in like other producers to help me do stuff, but I have overall hierarchy producing, yes.
All right. I mean, I guess one of the things that I was talking to Glitter, Vomit, and Red's Garden about earlier, which maybe you saw, maybe you didn't see, but thinking about the role that music plays in our sense of community, for myself, and one of the reasons why this project felt really important to me, not just because of the pandemic, but growing up in a super rural area where I didn't relate to the people around me, what I had was music, and what I looked to was music. And I listened to all kinds of stuff that was not considered mainstream, and stuff that gave me a sense of belonging. And so I'm wondering for you both what the role or your sense of community, how that influences or plays a part in the music that you have decided to go ahead and make and put out there. Or if you think about that at all, who that audience might be, and how that might reach or land on some young kid in the middle of nowhere.
Like specifically during this COVID quarantine time?
Not necessarily just related to the pandemic, but I think certainly people are actually in a space of feeling much more isolated now than maybe they have historically felt. Or perhaps it's in a different way, and it's not actually more or less, it's just different now. But thinking about, the music as it relates to your own sense of community and the community that you're trying to build up, or even as it relates to that audience member that or person like really far away and really remote that's listening to it. How does that sense of community influence or play a role in your music?
Am I on?
Yeah, you both are on. You guys can talk whenever you want.
I make underground music, so underground is probably like the nucleus of the community. To be honest, my music, I get more love and support from like the dark electronic music scene in LA rather than the queer community. I run parties in LA, like that's a whole separate, thing. I run 2 really big queer parties here. I DJ, I curate those. Obviously, that's a very, creating safe spaces for people is very important to me, and maintaining that. And I come from, again, like I grew up in the 90s. I grew up in a generation where it was very important to have queer specific spaces. So carrying on that legacy is very important to me. I know maybe people who are a lot younger might not find, specific queer spaces as necessary because the world is more homogenized and you meet people online or whatever. But, musically speaking, I feel like the people who come to my shows are just like punk kids and dark electronic music kids rather than queer community. I don't know. I feel like sometimes the queer community wants to just go out and dance and have a good time rather than go out and hear live music. That's just my opinion. That's just from living in LA for 7 years, that's what I've noticed. But I mean, yeah, obviously it's very important. You know, if if my music's reaching that one person who feels alone and, yeah, and that as a punk, like, you know, you're always told, I don't know, there were like 7 people at the first Sex Pistols show and things like that. You know, if my music is like changing 7 people's lives, that's all I really care about. Like I try to just look at that rather than that to me is success. And yeah, the community is very important, creating spaces. I mean, yeah, I come from an underground world. It's like the underground is the community. Yeah.
What was like the original question?
There were probably 12. But
Yeah.
I was thinking about the way in which, or the role that your music plays in a sense of community, whether that community is, you know, that kid that you're reaching in the middle of nowhere, or that big party of people that are participating in whatever live performance you're doing.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I don't know. At the end of, I just moved here from LA, like to New Orleans from LA. And I feel like I was in this like really like crazy, like underground, like dark punk, like drag scene that I was playing in a lot, where I would just like basically open up for like house party drag shows. And that was my community for like the 3 years before I moved here. And since I moved here, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, community plays a lot into my music making. I make like what I feel like is like sad, almost indie pop or something, but I'm like not actually a pop or something. And so I play like a lot of like live house shows and house shows. Community is definitely my thing, and I miss those a lot. But also I too like get hit up on people like from Instagram, like who are from far away, or like some like weird like gay kid out in the middle of nowhere who like write me and are like, I love Glen Parks and like I'm so appreciative of you, and all of that's important. Yeah.
I feel like that was probably me that was writing to you from Illinois saying, can you please participate in this? Because, so I guess my last question for you all is really related to how your respective genres might reflect your thought, desire, or your politics. So, you know, Agender is playing this like post-punk music that you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you called it the divine femininity. Is that what you said, Romy? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how your music with Agender or your solo project is reflecting your thoughts, desires, or your politics in the music. How do you feel like that's present for you?
It's very present. I mean, everything is political to me. My identity, again, like I feel it should be self-explanatory. Like I don't need to explain my identity so much in my music. Will you repeat the question? Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering about like the genre that you're playing in. So if you're playing with post-punk music, how that represents your thought, desire, or your politics.
I think post-punk is perfect. Like it's, you know, I have a very broad taste in music, but that's my staple. My staple is the post-punk because it's just like a pastiche of everything, you know? The music we make is very synth-heavy post-punk. It has elements of like straight-up synth-punk. And it's like very collage-y based, you know, like Dada-ish, you know, the way I write lyrics sometimes. And then, you know, it's piecemeal, like just grabbing bits and pieces of everything that exists. It's like, yeah, definitely collage music, which just is like political commentary, identity, desire. Yeah, it's just like a mishmash of stuff. And the record we just made, so I made a record which, I don't know when it will come out. It's when it feels right, when it feels like the world's kind of maybe excited and coming back to some kind of normalcy. But it's very much like this record is almost like a mixtape of post-punk from the 70s till now. Like it has bits of where it sounds like Wire, and then it sounds like Killing Joke, and then it sounds like Malaria or something. It's just, yeah, so it's like a homage to things, and then it's just all over the place because I am as a thinker. It's just like not very linear. It's just like a beautiful, which to me punk is. It's just like, again, collage music. So yeah, definitely the genre helps my way of life and my thinking. Like punk is my religion basically, and then that comes out in every way. So yeah.
How about you, Glenn?
Well, what is the question?
It's the same question, Glenn. It's the same question. How your genre, or the genre of music that people have categorized your music as, how that reflects your thought, desire, or your politics.
Oh, well, I don't know. My genre, oh God, I feel like my genre is something I'm always working with. Yeah, my dramatic indie pop or something. Yeah, like moody indie pop. And what is that? My fucking politics. Oh, sorry, cussing. I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't think that Glen Parks is like very political, to be honest. I feel like my music is definitely like emotional more than political, and I don't know if those things are, I don't necessarily like write in a wording that is political. I feel like all my stuff's just like feelings, like poetically instead.
But don't you think that space is actually like a political space, especially for a woman? I mean, I'm not saying like a woman, like that's a bad thing. I mean that, women are historically like marginalized in this huge variety of ways. And if they're emotional, then it's like cause for dismissal. I mean, not that there is any other, like there's a million ways that the sort of patriarchy says that women are cause for dismissal. But I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you this question was because the music that you're making could be considered to be this sort of pop music. And that I think that is a sort of political stance to own the emotional and to own that space that is so dominated by cis straight people, cis straight women. So I guess that's kind of why, or what I'm thinking about as I'm thinking about asking you the question. I'm not trying to influence you or change your mind if you're like not.
I mean, that was like kind of what I was gonna like get at, is that like, yeah, I feel like the only like stance for like Glen Parks, like I don't know, yeah, the like queerness of like making pop music, like as a woman who then like also, I mean, who I feel like also like half of my fans are like men who are just like also like listen to like my songs and are like, I feel my emotions finally, and you're like, and then I feel like I meet like lots of straight dudes who like listen to like Soft Brown Heart or something and are like, I literally love that song, and I'm like, you're a straight white guy, don't understand. And so like I don't really know what I feel about that, I guess. Politically saying, I don't like think about it too much. and probably like a way to like let me like still like be able to like write emotional music. But yeah, I feel like I try and keep like politics like out of my like creative writing circuit. Like it would like complicate things for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, you go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, as I'm not making music for a large audience, so it's a very different situation. But as a visual artist, I'm certainly not thinking about. Well, and maybe that's not true. I do think about how making art as who I am today versus maybe making art as making abstract art as a woman is maybe a little bit more punk and hardcore than my current position. But it is something that I think about in terms of like what I want that takeaway to be. And I think it's actually part of why I'm leaning more towards this social practice and more towards this community building space, is because I actually want to have more control and more say over whose voices get heard, which is part of what this platform has been really about for me. So I guess this is certainly not all about me, and I want to hear about all of you. We're about out of time, but if there's anything that maybe you wanted to share that you were hoping you were asked, or that's important to you to communicate to our audience tonight, I want to leave you some space to actually do that. And again, I'm sorry that we were missing our amazing moderator for this evening, and that you all were stuck with me.
And a great moderator.
I'm very grateful that you're all participating and having this conversation. So yeah, if there's anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask you, I would love to give you an opportunity to share right now.
I'll just end with music. To me, and art and expressions, just I don't really premeditate what I'm going to say or do. I do fundamentally believe that I'm here to help heal, and I'm here to deliver a message. And I have friends who are psychics and tarot readers, and work in that kind of, have access to that realm, and I do in a way too, in that like I'm just again delivering a message. I don't know where that's coming from, but so that, like, even I was in the studio the other day and was writing, and I was like, okay, show me what needs to be said. What do I need? And it just came. It's not like I think about it, and then it crosses many different themes. And I'm not overtly political either. Let me just say that as well. I don't. But yeah, I just don't believe my genre would be, and this is like a funny thing to me, but I just believe everything I make falls under like genre Genet. Like Jean Genet is my favorite writer ever, queer hero and icon of mine. And, he to me was someone, my art is basically like the beautiful and the brutal. Like I just want to explore the beautiful and the brutal. I'm a person of extreme harsh dichotomies. And that should come out. But yeah, I'm just here to heal and deliver a message, and that's all that matters to me. It's not even about me. I'm just trying to get out of the way. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Glenn?
I'm just a Libra, like trying to share my feelings.
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
I really appreciate both of you participating, and also, of course, Glitter Vomit and Brandon Strauss and Red's Garden. These platforms that create the space for our voices are so important to me, and I'm really grateful for your participation. So thank you so much for joining me tonight and for performing last week. Yeah, it's been really great to have you.